Thank you for joining us for another episode of She Looks Like Me. I am your host, Simone Cherie. I am very excited about today's guest. She is somebody who I was able to connect with through a very good friend, Lily May. And I'm excited about our chat today, sharing the importance of why our stories matter. And hopefully, for those of you who are interested in maybe self-publishing or writing a book, you'll find some gems in today's episode. So let's dive into a little bit about today's guest, April Cherie. April Sheris is a serial entrepreneur, author, creative visionary for young entrepreneurs, and CEO of Upland Avenue Productions, a diverse portfolio of publishing, media, and technology properties. April has made strides in the realms of economic and social responsibility by launching a literary networking platform to bridge the relationship between the film, literary, and journalism industries. This platform fostered new relationships with leaders in the state of Louisiana, as well as placed indie writers in front of industry insiders and fellow peers. April's also partnered with Barnes & Nobles for children reading initiatives, assisted youth in developing and launching their businesses through the Young Entrepreneurship Initiative, and launched Los Alamos programs, and later launched the first of Rail Reading Book Club in New Mexico through a collaborative partnership with NM Rail Runner Express. April has also worked with the New Mexico School for the Arts Art Institute to work on attracting money for art programs. And despite all of these achievements, she is constantly pursuing new projects and new ways to help women entrepreneurs flourish. April, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm so excited about this chat today because I am a writer at heart, secretly. And so I look forward to hopefully inspiring some other writers and maybe learning something myself. But first, before we dive into our chat, I want to know what's bringing you joy these days in this 11 days, a few days to election. What is
Yeah.
bringing you joy?
It's so funny because I think, it started out looking very promising. Going into 2020, everybody had these strong goals, like I'm going to do this and I'm going to crush that. And pandemic hit, and then we had a lot of racial tension throughout the country. But for me, what I have found to bring me the most joy is just staying centered and connecting more with family. I'm a mother, so I've had the pleasure, honestly, the pleasure of being quarantined with all of my children. They're teenagers, and then I have a very small 4-year-old. And believe it or not, we have really enjoyed each other's company. We got a chance to learn and respect each other's boundaries. And it's just been really, really great to just leave the outside world outside and just be present with my family and my kids. So
I love that. I'm the same way. So I actually am on the road right now. I'm with my mom, but we just got finished visiting my grandma. And I feel like I have taken for granted, up until 2020, I've taken for granted A, having my family, B, being so close to my family, and then just, being only a drive away. So this year I have probably visited my family more this year than I have in the last few years, which is terrible on my part, but nonetheless, we're doing better and moving forward. So I completely agree.
it's been a story of everyone's life, right? We didn't realize how much time we were disconnected from family or from longtime friends. So 2020, if anything, has really made people pay attention and value those relationships. So
I agree. So today's topic is, our stories matter. And that is such a loaded topic. But one of the things that I wanted us to chat about a little bit, because that tends to be the first step, is like why our unique stories matter and the importance of storytelling. I know a lot of times we feel like, who cares? And sometimes we have people telling us, like, why are you so important? Why do you feel like you need to share your story? You're not the only person that goes through that, which I might have just answered my own question, right? Like, you're not the only person going through that. So that's absolutely why your story matters. But for you being in the industry, I'm curious to know how you have those conversations or how you feel about, why our unique stories matter.
like you said, it's healing. Sometimes we get into our own bubble, especially when it comes to negativity, and we think that, oh my God, why is this happening to me? And how do I get out of it? And sometimes when we share our story, then we can provide the answer to someone else and they can begin their healing journey. Or it can just be inspiring. Perhaps it wasn't something negative, but it was a career or entrepreneurism that you started, and someone else might have been thinking about the same thing. So I always say that, everyone's story is unique and it is important. And, never fear or worry about those things. Just tell it, because you're going to find one or a few people who it may resonate with. So,
Absolutely. I think so. One of the things that my therapist has me do whenever,
mhm,
because sometimes I'll just shoot her this long email and she'll be like, well, maybe you should just spend some time writing it out. Or she'll ask me, how did it feel to write this email? And a lot of times I work myself through whatever I'm going through by just putting it down on paper or typing it up. And
right.
so part of that process of telling your story is kind of sitting with the shame or the guilt or the frustration or the anger and kind of sitting with that, writing it down on paper and kind of working through your emotions as you go through it so it can be healing not only for others but yourself as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And then, it just goes back to like when we were younger kids, people always encouraged us to journal. Maybe, maybe it was just a girl thing. It's like, get your diary and writing your diary. And we didn't realize the importance of it until we became adults and had responsibilities. So yeah, just write it down, and share it, even if it's just with a friend that you're close to. You just never know what could come of it. So.
So, how would somebody even, because I know with books are the new rich, which we're going to talk more about later, you help people get through the self publishing process. Is that correct?
Yeah, so more or less, we have drawn all of the what if questions and how to questions that you're going to, or author is going to experience on this self publishing journey.
Mhm.
To have a centralized platform, we stay connected with them also, because the truth of the matter is you can have all the information in the world. Sometimes what you really need the most is going to be motivation or support. So it is really just like you said, helping self-publishing authors through the journey, or even if you're just an aspiring author and you're just trying to figure out, should I self-publish or should I do traditional publishing? We help you weigh your options and determine what would be a good fit.
That is very dope. So I'm a little bit familiar with the process,
Mhm.
but if someone comes to you and says, "I have this idea for this book. I want to write something, but I'm not a writer, or maybe I am a writer, but I've never written a book." So how does someone even get started with that? Like high level, what do the steps look like from I have this idea to I'm selling my book?
So the first thing is determining which is going to be the best route. Because if you have an engaged following on your social media platforms, or even a very large email subscriber base, then you can handle a lot of the work yourselves and just speak directly to your audience, like a lot of music artists do. Or if you don't have that and you're just a little don't have the confidence to run a business behind the scenes like you're going to need, then traditional publishing is going to be the way you go. Just to touch on traditional publishing, what that process looks like is that usually you're going to acquire an agent. That agent is going to pitch your book to the traditional publishing houses and presses. Most of them do not accept unsolicited work, and so that will be the only way they can get you through the door, is if you have an agent. And choosing an agent is really critical. You want to make sure you have someone who is aligned with what your values are and where you want to go with your brand and book. But then you also want to select someone that has a track record, right? Because you just don't want your book sitting in a pile amongst other ones either. So if you do decide to do traditional publishing, that's going to be the first step. If you want to go the self-publishing route, then it's really just taking your followers on a journey. From the moment you come up with a title, write out a brief synopsis or a summary of what your book is going to be about, and just go to social media and say, hey guys, this is what I'm planning on doing. I would really love your feedback. It's something that's near and dear to me. It's going to be a journey, and I hope, I have your support along the way. And usually people will rally behind you, especially if they've been engaging with you anyway. And I think that's a really great place to determine if this is something that people would be interested in or not. Just share one or two sentences about, where you're kind of going with your book to your social media following, and use that feedback to determine what your next steps are going to be. But it's going to be full on marketing no matter which way you go. You have to be ready to market full speed. So.
I'm glad you said that because I think a lot of people think, oh, I want to go the publishing route because it's going to be that much easier. And a lot of times it's like, no, if you're trying to get to market, self publishing is going to be the quicker route. And I say quicker route, air quotes, but the reality is like you have more control over that process. And so that was actually one of the things, that was the next thing we were going to talk about, was why publishing independently might be a better option for someone as opposed to going through a publisher.
I always stand behind self-publishing only because, you're not working this hard and being this creative to give your creativity away to someone else. When you do traditional publishing, that advance that a lot of people hear about is because they're paying you for the rights of your work. And then you have to work that book to pay off that advance before you can ever see any royalties. And then once you get to talk about royalties, a huge percentage of your profits is going to go to your publisher. And that small percentage is what you're going to be left with. So as an author, you don't want to be stuck with overworking yourself or producing a lot of work and just getting a small benefit that you're going to reap. When you go the self-published route, you retain more control of your work. You are part of the creativity process. So you can say, no, this is not my vision, and people are going to follow suit. You also, again, get to retain a large bulk of the royalties. I won't say 100% because, of course, you have other costs associated, like print costs, every time someone purchases a book. So yeah, you, other than the control and retaining more of your money, you can direct your career or your brand as an author exponentially, as opposed to if you were working with a traditional publisher. I think traditional publishing is great if you have insecurities about how to run a business and how to market your business.
Mm. That is a really good distinction. I never thought about it like that. Although I do know sometimes people tend to, and I think we just automatically think, and we hear about, big name celebrities or influencers, and they're like, I got a book deal. And they're like, well, I need a book deal too. Otherwise, how am I going to get my book out there? And so I know we talked about, before our recording, we talked about, how important marketing is when you're going to self publish, and how you have to really get creative with promoting that book and continually promoting that book and thinking beyond just the shelves of like Barnes and Noble or Target. And so, what advice would you have related to that journey? Because I know that I've even heard people say that there's no point in self publishing because only your friends and family are going to buy, which, let's not discount our friends and family, okay? Because 9 times out of 10, that is where we get all of our first sales. So we're not going to sleep on family and friends. But, when you are going that self publishing route, what does that look like in terms of getting creative with your marketing and thinking about ways to promote the book, but also not necessarily just be thinking about those traditional distribution outlets?
So for me, I always tell people to celebrate the small wins, So once you finish with your manuscript, and you have uploaded your work to a platform that of your choosing that you feel comfortable with, go ahead and create an event. When I first started out, I created what I call the author's toast. Your book isn't here, but you have finished the book, and now we're on to the next step. So we're going to invite a lot of friends and family, people in our network out to celebrate and to toast you just on this monumental step. And then that way people can learn more about what your book is about. They can interact with you, your personality as an author. And then you can have them, write down that email so that you can stay in touch once the book comes out. So if you're self-publishing, celebrate the small wins by creating events every step of the way. Prepare and feel comfortable with going live. Utilize your social media platforms that you have. Even if your following is small and it's only just friends and family, when you go live, always encourage people, say, hey, you know what? If this information helped you, or someone who this information would benefit, please share my social media page or bring them to the next event. We're going to have it at X, Y, and Z date. And some people don't mind doing it, especially if they really enjoyed the time that they spent with you. So be very present on social media, plan events every step of the way. Rely heavily, heavily, heavily on word of mouth because, of course, if it's not a book, everything else we purchase in life, it's usually from a referral from someone we know. So really encourage your friends and family, even if they haven't bought the book, just every time you see them, hey, did you mention my book when you went out to this event or so-and-so's house, And usually they'll laugh it off and be like, I have you next time. And then it's spread like that. So just really don't just think about the retail shelf, because if ever there's another pandemic or next year stores are going to be slow to open again, then you don't have that to rely on. You're only going to have digital. So utilize the digital and social marketing platforms that you have and really rely heavily on your friends and family connections because they're really going to help the words travel fast.
I know when I started my first business, definitely my first few sales were best friend, mom, grandma.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much everyone because especially if they have known about it for a long time, they're just going to be so glad you finished this, and made this made it to the finish line that they're going to support you. Even if you're a part of civic organizations or your local church or your doctor's office, I tell people all the time, talk to them. You are patronizing their business anyway, so sometimes if you're a long-time customer or client, they would be more open to allowing you to leave your work there. Just don't expect it to be anything long term, of course, but really tap into every outlet that you have if you're going to do the self-publishing route. Yeah.
So I'm curious about what resources or platforms someone interested in self-publishing can look to in order to learn more and get support. Of course, we're talking about books are the new rich, but I'm just curious what information or resources you share with prospective or those authors who are in the process to get to the self-publishing place.
Yeah, so there are going to be a lot of different options. One that is on the rise is Amazon. They use a platform called Kindle Direct Publishing. You would create an account and upload your work there. You won't get much critiquing on your work there, but it's going to be the most cost efficient place for you to actually get your book out there. And plus, Amazon is global, right? So you're going to have a fast track to all of their global outlets in terms of retail space. I know that there are some people who are just against Amazon everything because they seem to be taking over. And for those people, there are other outlets such as Ingram Spark. It's dedicated solely for publishing authors. It's a really great resource to have because they have helpful tools, blogs. There's a forum that allows you to learn so much just about the business side, about what metadata is so that you can have the correct metadata so that people can find your book. You can purchase your ISBN there, which is going to be that unique number that retailers use to find your book other than the title. So yeah, Ingram Spark is a really great resource. The Ingram Company, period, also offers self-published authors distribution opportunities. So depending on where you're at on your publishing journey or how many books you have under your belt now, you can just sign up for distribution through one of Ingram's companies as well. And then there are some other platforms like Blurb. They're going to be a little bit more pricey when it comes to book cost because each book, whether it's color or black and white, is going to carry a price tag, and so they could be a little bit more expensive. And then Lulu, is another one. There are 1,000 or countless other vanity presses like that, but I really like Ingram, the Ingram Company, or Amazon. So Amazon's going to be user friendly if you just want to get a book out there and start to acquire a fan base.
Okay, that was super helpful. So I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to ask this question because I know that somebody out there is thinking about it and they're like, no, I need the answer, even though that's not all we should be thinking about. But
Right.
how does someone get on the shelves of Barnes and Noble? They're like, no, I want to be in my bookstore. I want to go pick it up. Is that part of going through Ingram or Kindle Direct, or is that something totally separate?
Yeah, so of course with Amazon, it's only going to be Amazon outlets if you decide to do Amazon. And another thing to note about Amazon is that right now they're only doing ebooks and paperback copies. So if you really envisioned a hardback book, then Amazon's not going to be the best option for you. However, when you get with a company like Ingram or Ingram Spark, which is what I mentioned earlier, they're one and the same. They have a distribution attachment to their company, and once you upload your book, you can select global marketing, and it will do exactly what it says. It will list your book into the inventory spaces for retailers to determine if they want to carry it in store or not. And that's not just going to be domestically, it's going to be worldwide to retailers as well. So that is the easy part, right? Because a retailer can find my book. However, that doesn't equate that your book is going to actually be on that shelf at your local bookstore. And so a lot of times you really want to establish that connection with the local store. We encourage you to reach out to whoever would handle merchandising in the bookstore, especially for your specific genre. A lot of times they will have you create an account. And the thing that causes pushback with a lot of authors who use companies for distribution only is that they don't accept books where they can't return unsold copies, Or if someone wants to say, I don't want this book, I need to return it and I want a refund. If you're not set up to handle that and let that particular store know how they can get the books back to you at your cost, then you're going to run into a little pushback. So as long as you can talk that out and negotiate the best way to handle that on your behalf, most of your local bookstores are going to be welcoming you. Again, it doesn't equate to having prime retail space. So it's steps, right? Now you're on the shelf, but in terms of having prime retail space where people can just walk to an end cap into your book, or you're displayed on the table, usually that comes with some heavy hitting funding. It's like advertising. So just like anything, if you really want prime space, sometimes you have to pay. Or if you can create a really great community event that would bring the masses out to the bookstore, a lot of times they'll say, well, we will set you up on this table for your event day only. But that's still great, right? Because now people can come in, they see you heavily displayed, and they're encouraged to purchase. So
Absolutely. I went to Barnes and Noble not that long ago, and there are really just so many books in there. So, like you said, when you said it's levels to this,
yep.
absolutely, because there were some books that were just kind of buried in the shelves
Mhm.
compared to, of course, your big names and your recent, of course, Michelle Obama still in the front,
Yeah.
and all your whatever big name latest releases, those are all at the front. But in terms of looking for some very niche book, you kind of have to dig through. And a lot of times you have to ask the people to help you find it. So self-publishing definitely sounds like the route, though. Even if you want to get into those places, self-publishing definitely sounds like the way to go.
Yeah, definitely. Because the truth of the matter is, you're going to have to do the work anyway. You don't expect to be with a publisher and they're going to say, hey, I'm going to get you on the shelf in your local bookstore. It doesn't work like that either, especially if they're one of the pre-existing traditional publishers who have a roster of clients. So you're still going to have to do a little work on your own anyway. So you might as well walk away with the most benefits and the most money, honestly.
We need the most money.
Right.
So do you meet prospective authors or aspiring authors before they've even started? And if you have, what do you see is kind of preventing them from getting started or just getting that kind of writing process underway? And what nuggets do you share with them to kind of help them get through that?
So a lot of the times I do find that people have already started working. They're near completion, but it's the question remains consistently across the board is it good enough? Because of course we always second guess ourselves. We always second guess our talent, especially if we're comparing our talents to someone else's. And for me, it's just really being supportive and encouraging. So it's like having a cheer team behind you. You really just have to keep people informed that their talent is just as great as the next person. Let them know that the only difference between them and who's on the shelf or who's outselling now is marketing. So the stories really can be as great or not great as your marketing is. So don't really get discouraged in thinking that your writing isn't that good. Write the book. We're going to have an editor work with you anyway, and they're going to perfect it. So any flaws you think that will be exposed are really non-existent, because once it goes through the editing process, we're going to clean all of that up.
So I also want to chat a little bit about expectations around the editing process. So I know so I'm sharing with y'all on this podcast, even though I haven't launched it yet. I have an entire book written,
Mhm.
and I wrote it years ago, and I just had it in me at the time. It was like, we're just going to sit here. I was physically handwriting for a while, and then I switched to computer, and and now it's like 150 word pages. Like it's long. And I started working with an editor, and things just kind of fell flat. And I don't know if it was because of my expectations
Mhm.
or the timing was just bad in my life or a combination of all of it, but I didn't like I was kind of left to my own devices to kind of figure things out. And so for those people who might be about to undertake that journey or maybe considering working with an editor, what expectations should one have? I know there are different types of editing, right? Like there's, copy editing, or there's, structural stuff. So kind of I guess take us through what people should be thinking about as they're maybe looking for an editor or looking to go into the editing phase of it.
So I believe that working with an editor is like being in a relationship. You have to feel confident in what you're bringing to the table. You have to feel confident in what they're bringing to the table, because it's going to get a little thick, because their job is to pull out the best result in this body of work. And sometimes as a writer, we become too attached to what we've written that we don't want to take the constructive criticism, or we don't want to remove words or things like that. So when you go into the process of working with an editor, have an open mind and make sure that before you get to this step, that you are not 100% attached to what you've written as is, because 100% it's going to change. And always keep in mind that, the end goal is to present this body of work to the masses in the best and most professional way possible. So when you look at it like that, you say, you know what, maybe you're right. Let's just do it your way and then see what the end result is. Of course, if you feel like your story has changed so far from who you are as a writer, or it doesn't have the same feel that you wanted people to get when they read the book, then definitely express those concerns. But working with the editor is going to be a pain in the beginning, but you're going to love the heck out of them at the end, because the end result is really beautiful to see the how it starts to where it ends up at. It's going to be beautiful. So enjoy that process and look at it like this is going to be a long-term relationship. I'm probably going to hate you in the beginning, but you're only looking out for my best interest, and it's going to be great in the end.
I feel like you just described what would probably be equated to like a literary therapist.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
That sounds like me and my therapist, because some days I leave sessions and I'm like, sis, I don't want to hear nothing you just told me to do. But on the other side of it, it's like, oh, I'm so glad you gave me that advice. I'm a better person. I'm more evolved now. So it
Right.
definitely sounds like a literary therapist.
It is. It's a very painful process though, because I understand, when you're a creative or you spent so long finally finishing something, in your mind, okay, it might need a little changing, but sometimes you get in that editing room and it seems like they slashing things left and right, and it's like what I have left. So yeah, it's a crazy process, but worth it.
But I feel like you gave us a gem in what you just said. I feel like you gave us a gem in saying that as creatives, as people with ideas, we tend to come into it thinking this is our thing, this is our baby, and we don't want anybody to touch it or tell us anything about it. And I think that can be applied across any creative journey, whether you're starting a t-shirt business or writing a book. You can't be attached to how you thought you were going to come into the world with it, because as soon as you put that thing out, or in the case of going into the editing process, you are going to get that feedback, and you have to be open to the feedback in order to keep going and moving forward and getting to a place where either you have a finished book, or you have a product line that's taking off.
I always think of Erica Badu, when she says I'm an artist, but I'm sensitive about my shit. Like that is literally everyone when you're creating something, especially on the first time. Once you're book in, you're like, okay, I already know what's about to come. Let's just get it over with.
Absolutely. So getting over that first hump. So one of the things that I want to make sure that maybe we touch on this episode, because it was a gem that even though me and that editor weren't able to get through that process, and again, for me, I think it was just bad timing, but one of the things that she said, or she posed the question to me, was, is this your only book idea? And the reason she posed that question to me was because a lot of times people just have one book idea and they expect that that book is going to take off and make them millions, not realizing that sometimes you have to get a few books under your belt before people start taking you seriously as an author, and then going back and buying those earlier books, right? So kind of the importance of, on one hand, being present, but at the same time kind of thinking about if whatever concept, whatever book idea you have can be 2 or 3 books or a series or something like that, kind of like Harry Potter, or I'm trying to think of other book series, but I know there's tons of them out there. So what are your thoughts on that, or that suggestion for prospective authors?
Yeah, that is a great point of view to have, because the truth of the matter is it's very highly unlikely that you're just going to skyrocket to the millions of books sold. category just off of one book, especially if you're relatively unknown. And by unknown, I don't mean like, oh yeah, I'm on social media, but that may be 1,800 or 7,000 followers compared to the billions of people that exist in the world. So really have an end goal and perspective for this project, but look to the future. If it is going to be a one book deal, then let that be known, but also get with a marketing team, someone that is really great at strategizing or business development, because you're going to need to tap into collaborations like brand partnerships. You're going to need to go out on tour, hosting book tour, and sometimes that can take a majority of your year. You have to really think about other things to help bring in income other than just this one book, if it's going to be a one book situation.
Ooh, I love, so you said a key word that I want to just touch on. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but you mentioned brand partnerships.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you said that, I was like, what kind of brand partnerships would I or someone as a prospective author maybe look at that would help them sell or, promote their book?
Yeah. So, the best example that I always think of and I share with people is like, let's look at Jennifer Hudson when she first started her career. Right after American Idol, she had her first CD out. But the truth of the matter is, at that particular time, Hollywood was not as accepting of a plus size or curvy girl at the time. So, rightfully so, her team said, you know what, let's make a partnership deal with Weight Watchers. And it became a win-win situation. She got to slim down. She got some really helpful tips on dieting and food options and things like that. But then also Weight Watchers got a really high profile celebrity attached to their name that can bring in business for them. So you have to think like that as an author. Whether your book is on wellness or you have a children's book, look into options that will work for you. So for instance, if you do have a wellness book and it's not about exercising, then you could tap into like your local gym. Say, hey, I have a Planet Fitness here locally. I might not be able to get the whole franchise, but if I could tap into the local gym, then maybe we can work on something collaboratively where I can come in and speak on wellness tips on my book as one of their classes. And I could keep my book here and have signage at this particular location so that when members come in, they can see it and they get to know me through the class in exchange for whatever benefit that gym would be expecting from you. So if you have a children's book, you might want to tap into merchandising partnerships. Say, well, I have a book about dinosaurs, and I really want kids to have a plushie that resembles the character of my book. So I know that there's a local manufacturer of plushies or plush toys here locally, or maybe they're not local. Just really think about what can expand your book. So think about the characters of your story. Think about the genre that your book is in. Think about where you want to go with your brand. So if you decide that, hey, I have this book, just to use wellness as another example, I have this book on wellness and I don't want to just be stuck on, food or working out. I really want to hold a retreat on meditation and mindfulness. So now that's an in real life experience that you can create for your followers, and then you would look for retreat centers or venues where you can hold this type of experience for everyone who would attend. So there's so many things that you can think of for brand partnerships.
I was gonna say those are really good gems, GEM, not GYM, like you were just
Yeah.
saying. But I agree, because sometimes we think, oh, we gotta have the Planet Fitness, corporate approval, not realizing that the local neighborhood Planet Fitness has its own manager and its own managerial staff that a lot of times have the leeway to make those decisions to do community events. And 9 times out of 10, with those companies too, they have somebody in that role of community events or community involvement, and they are looking for things to do, looking for activities to hold, whether it's for the existing members that, they are looking for ways to engage them, or they're looking for ways to engage new community members to get them into their store, or get them familiar with their plushie toy company or whatever the case is. And we sometimes look at it as though the brand partnership is only going to benefit us, and so it kind of puts us at a disadvantage, when really it's a mutually beneficial partnership. It's just kind of defining, right, what that is, so that hopefully whoever you want to partner with sees the value in it enough to say, hey, let's do it.
Right, exactly. And another thing that I forgot to mention, and I think is so key right now when we're talking about business development and brand partnerships, is that you also have to get in your mind that you're going to hear no. It's not going to magically work every time you walk in. And sometimes you may hear no more times than you hear yes, but just know that that's part of the process. If it doesn't align with what is really for you, then you don't want that anyway, right? Just keep going. There are millions of options out there for you to try, and just keep pounding the pavement and going on to the next one.
Yes, take those no's and keep it moving because eventually
Right.
you're gonna get a yes. I had someone tell me that once that, and of course, for those who are, kind of into the entrepreneur stories and things like that, of course, the infamous story of Starbucks and how they got, I think, 243 no's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, something ridiculous. I know a lot of people would have stopped way before 200 anything.
Yeah. Right.
It's like at the point that you've got 200 no's, you might just feel like let's time to hang it up. But the reality is like if you really believe in this thing, and I think, when you let purpose and vision lead the way, that kind of gives you that clarity on whether or not this is something you're supposed to be doing. But once you have that, then it's like, yeah, keep going until you get that yes.
Right. Exactly.
So I want to talk a bit about, before we go, I want to talk a little bit about Books Are the New Rich, how you support authors, and what someone who is in that or on that journey, why they could come to, or how they can come to Books Are the New Rich and kind of get the support as they're going through this process of self-publishing.
Yeah, yeah. So again, it was created solely to help individuals who wanted to self-publish. However, again, like I mentioned earlier, if you are an author who have already, your book is already published, either with a traditional publisher or a small press, you can still reap the benefits because it's geared to not just teach you about the publishing business, like the intro of the publishing and how to bring your book to retail readiness, but it also majorly focuses on creating that brand in that business. So we walk you through steps of planning this book tour, how to become a paid speaker, other options that you can consider just from having a book that can bring in income. We teach you about getting brand sponsorship. So it's so many different moving parts after that book is retail ready that will allow you to actually grow and scale your brand and create the income that you're really looking for. And the beauty of it is once you do it one time, if you decide to write another book, then you already know, how to get the moving parts going again. So that's majorly what Books Are the New Rich is, to teach you how to scale your brand to make the income or live rich, like the name says. So and then once you join us, we have a community of other authors that you can rely and lean on for other questions that you may have along the way. If you need to reach out to myself or someone else on the team directly, just to see, about a particular obstacle that you're facing, we are available to you for those services as well. So we try to stay connected. We try to make sure that you're plugged into people in the same space that you're in, like writing a book. And then we have creative content where we can bring in professionals where you can ask them who are in these places, like what we discussed earlier about getting your book on retail shelf. So anyone who doesn't listen to the interview today, that's an option that they have. Once they join Books Are the New Rich, they'll be able to speak to someone directly.
So Books Are the New Rich, is it like a monthly membership? Is it like a 6-month cohort? What does that look like in terms of, okay, now I'm a Books Are the New Rich member. Am I in it for life? Am I in it until I decide otherwise? How does that work?
So it is only a one-time fee. It's a master class, and it has about 6 components to it. Once you go through each one of the components, you can come back and look at this information on demand for a full year. You will always stay connected and plugged into our community, though, because again, no matter if this is your first time or your 50th time, everyone needs support, especially a team of people to rally behind them who actually know what this process is like. So you'll always stay plugged into the community. And even after, if you have finished all of the courses and you still have questions, we have already set launch component to the program where you can have a mentorship with myself or one of the other team members who are highly trained. So.
Ooh, mentorship is everything, especially on that process, because
Right.
I think in our pre-session, you mentioned how writing the book is the easy part, even though some people, struggle to get through that part. But it's like really writing it down, whatever the vision or the idea is, that's the easy part. It's everything after that.
Right, right. It really is. Because like we just mentioned not too long ago, editing, it's going to take you through all kind of emotions, and you thought writing the book was emotional, but so there's so many things to come after that book is done. But it's definitely a journey. It's worthwhile journey because it's so rewarding just to see your own strength in the process and just to see how your work touch or impacts other lives once it's out and available to people. So yeah, it's a great journey.
That's wonderful. Well, you've given me a little bit of encouragement to kind of get back into it.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous because I know how, what it's like to, again, kind of as a creative, have your work chopped up. It doesn't always feel good.
Right. It doesn't feel good, but it's gonna pay off. Just maybe another month and you might be there and done. So
I love that. April, thank you so, so much. I have really enjoyed our chat, and hopefully we've inspired somebody to tell their story and to check out Books Are the New Rich so they can have a supportive community and have the help that they need to get through that process. If somebody is interested in keeping up with you or Books Are the New Rich, how would they get in touch with you?
yeah, so I am on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Snapchat, but I'm not one of those, people who like the Snapchat and TikTok thing. I haven't made it there yet, but on Facebook and Instagram, you can find me at April Sheris on both platforms. Also, you can follow our page, Books Are the New Rich, on Instagram, that particular handle, and then visit us at the website, www.booksarethenewrich.com. And, we hope to see you on the inside.
Absolutely. We are going to be encouraging some people to publish some books, self-publish, so you can keep all your coins or as many of the coins that are to come to you.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, April. I appreciate you. I am so grateful for today's episode, and I can't wait for us to hopefully maybe do another one.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was enjoyable. So I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay, thank you. I want to take just a second to say thank you once again to today's guest, April. Our chat was fun and easy. If you are thinking about writing a book, if you are already on the journey, or if you know someone who is, feel free to share this episode with them and point them in the direction of Books Are the New Rich. If you are in or around the Santa Fe, New Mexico area, and you're looking for one of your community members who is a stylish book marketing queen to follow on social platforms, follow April on her personal platforms as well. Before we go, I'll leave you with this quote, just something to think about. A quote from Maya Angelou: "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." So get that story out. We are waiting to hear it. I thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of She Looks Like Me. I'll see you next time.